Police release footage of violent Tyre Nichols arrest. It has been analyzing the videos released by the city of Memphis. There are still a few elements that remain unclear. The 4 videos do not show why the police officers decided to stop Tyre Nichols in the first place. At different stages in the videos, officers seem to have secured the control of his hands. There is no sign of him fighting back, yet officers continue to use violence, inflicting baton strikes and punches to the head. At one point, before the arrival of an ambulance, around 10 officers can be seen standing near Mr. Nichols, but no one seems to assist him while he appears to be in visible distress. The 4th and final video is from the body cam of another unnamed officer. It shows the same incident as the 3rd video. The footage begins with a brief chase that ends with the officers tackling Tyre Nichols. It appears that the body cam becomes detached from the officer, as for the first few minutes nothing can be seen and we can only hear what sounds like a scuffle and conversation. We again hear Mr. Nichols calling out for his mother, and officers using expletives while ordering him to give them his hands. At one point, the officers can be heard telling one another that they thought Mr. Nichols was on something, seeming to indicate that they believed he had been using drugs. There is no known evidence that this was the case. Once the officer's body cam is back on, we get a clearer view of Mr. Nichols as he's slumped against the unmarked police car. He appears to be injured and blood is visible on his head. He does not speak. One officer pulls him up after he slumps to the side. He is variously seen sitting up, leaning on the car or slumped on the ground. A significant portion of the video shows officers speaking to one another and recounting details of the incident. Some of the officers claim that Mr. Nichols swung at them or reached for their guns. Neither allegation is supported by the released video. Another officer later claims Mr. Nichols swerved and almost struck his police vehicle. Officers can also be heard discussing the fact that nothing was found in his car. Tyre Nichols called for mother as officers hit him. The next video released by the city of Memphis is bodycam footage. It is a different angle of what we saw in the second clip taken from the CCTV camera. It shows the moment officers locate Tyre Nichols after he fled, and is graphic. 2 officers can be seen wrestling with him while he's on the ground. The officer wearing the bodycam threatens to spray him. Mr. Nichols appears to be in distress and repeatedly calls out for his mother. Soon after, police call for him to give them his hands. The officer wearing the bodycam walks away and appears to have been hit with pepper spray. He then returns and pulls out his expandable baton, which we also saw clearly in the second video from the pole camera. Using an expletive, he shouts at Mr. Nichols and makes clear he plans to strike him with the baton. He strikes him several times, and another officer can be seen punching Mr. Nichols in the face while his hands are restrained. The officer wearing the bodycam calls in their location, and officers can be seen struggling with Mr. Nichols as more officers arrive. We're continuing to review the footage. On the ground in Memphis, there are early signs of protests. Some have gathered with signs calling for an end to police violence. Others carry placards reading "Justice for Tyre Nichols." Cities around the U.S. have also been on alert for potential protests. Here in Washington, D.C., a small crowd of a few dozen people have already gathered in a park near the White House. The second of the 4 videos is footage from a pole CCTV camera and contains no audio. Shortly after it begins, the camera pivots and shows several officers surrounding Tyre Nichols as he's on the ground. As 2 officers work to restrain him, a third can be seen walking up to him and kicking him in the head. Moments later, a 4th officer, it is unclear which, pulls out an expandable baton and appears to strike Mr. Nichols several times. Others appear to punch him. At the 5-minute mark, Mr. Nichols is seen on the ground and can be seen writhing. By this point, officers are no longer striking him. He is then taken to an unmarked police vehicles, where he is leaned against the door. The first of the 4 videos that have been released is police bodycam footage, which shows the initial traffic stop involving Tyre Nichols. The officers can be heard shouting commands, as well as expletives and threats, at Mr. Nichols and ordering him out of the car. "I didn't even do anything," he can be heard saying. The officers then take him to the ground as the 29-year-old protests his innocence. An officer can be heard threatening to break his arms as they instruct him to get on his stomach. The officers repeatedly shout at Mr. Nichols and demand he lies flat. He then breaks free of the officers and flees on foot. The officers deploy pepper spray and at least one taser in an unsuccessful attempt to stop him. He is not seen again in this first portion of the footage. Released. The rest of the video shows officers using water to spray their eyes after being hit inadvertently with pepper spray. The officer wearing the body cam, who is white and doesn't appear to be one of the 5 facing charges, can be heard saying that he hopes his fellow officers stomp Mr. Nichols when they find him. Moments ago, White House reporters asked President Joe Biden what was at stake as the nation prepares to watch the arrest video of Tyre Nichols. Biden said innocent lives were most at stake tonight, adding that the video also had a lot to say and do with the image of America. It has a lot to do with whether or not we're the country we say we are. That we're a country of law and order, and means by which we can peacefully protest. Let the courts make the judgment, he said. We're now seeing images of businesses in downtown Memphis covering their windows with plywood boards out of concern for protests later tonight. The family of Tyre Nichols, as well as President Joe Biden and other officials, have called on protesters to remain peaceful. We spoke to Memphis Police Chief Cyrlin Davis about Tyre Nichols' death and the video of his encounter with police. Law enforcement has not made the video public yet, but have spoken extensively to the press and public in advance of its release. Davis said she'd been shocked and appalled when she first saw the video 2 weeks ago, but she also said that there is not enough footage to support what the stop was about. The reason behind this stop has not been substantiated through video or even any radio, Davis said. Something happened that we can't explain. The encounter seems to have begun at an aggressive stage. Davis also said that, if you look at the video, race has nothing to do with it. Ego, a lot of other factors. These officers tried to stop Mr. Nichols in various iterations but were unsuccessful. She pledged that the department was conducting an individual evaluation of all units in the wake of Nichols' death. President Biden had called the mother of Tyre Nichols just before I spoke with her. Rovon Wells told me Biden offered condolences and said he'd do everything in his power to get things changed. I met her outside the empty Olive Church. She seemed tired following a lengthy press conference but held closely by her husband and lawyer. She spoke forcefully. Earlier she had urged parents not to let their children watch the video which reportedly shows 5 police officers brutally beating her son. She hasn't been able to bring herself to watch it. When I walked into the hospital, I saw my son. I already knew what they did, she said. I don't need to see a video to show me what they did. I saw the end results. My son is dead. I don't need to see a video to know that he's not here anymore. But the more she's heard about what happened, the more she's convinced that police initially lied to her. They said he resisted arrest for drunk driving and they had to tase and pepper spray him. But when I got to the hospital, I saw a whole different thing, she said. Photos of her son in hospital, she said, don't look like a person being tossed and just pepper sprayed. Wells has said that the 5 black police officers let down the black community and disgraced their families. But she told me that when it came to the use of excessive force, the issue was the race of the victim, not race of the police. It's not about the color of the police officer. We don't care if it's black, white, pink, purple. What they did was wrong, she said. And what they're doing to the black communities is wrong. We're not worried about the race of the police officer. We're worried about the conduct of the police officers. She said she wants the authorities to investigate anyone who was involved in her son's death, from the police officers to the emergency responders to the fire department. We've been reporting the warning from Memphis Police Chief Cyrlin Davis that the body cam footage of the police stop of Tyre Nichols is distressing and worse than Rodney King ahead of its release to the public. Let's take a look back at the moment, more than 30 years ago, that caused shock and outrage around the world. Footage showed black motorist Rodney King being beaten by 4 white police officers in Los Angeles in 1991. While others looked on. While the use of excessive force was not uncommon, what made the beating of King unusual at the time was that it was captured on camera. The black and white witness footage of 4 white officers beating and kicking him nearly to death was one of the first instances such brutality had been filmed. The community had been grappling with excessive use of force by the majority white police department for years, but now, there was proof. The trial and subsequent acquittal of the officers involved sparked violent riots. Anger led to days of looting and burning, 55 deaths, and $1 billion, 610 M, of damage to the city, and a state of emergency was declared. The outcry eventually forced changes to the Los Angeles Police Department. Thank you for watching my video. For more videos, stay connected.